Should Tennessee fans be okay with this talent fee, which is essentially just a season ticket price increase? So the poll question is on our YouTube page. Take a part in that, as it's pretty simple. Tennessee's talent fee / season ticket price hike is price gouging or necessary. Caleb, it has to be one or the other in the way you phrased it. Necessary would be that the Vols are going to have to pay out about $35 million in revenue sharing once Congress settles how much the players are going to get. And we think it's about $35 million. Price gouging, on the other hand, would be just taking advantage of a fan base that is uber excited. Really haven't played anybody yet. So, Caleb, if you had to choose, which of the two would you choose? Price gouging or necessary? And we want to hear your comments in the message board as well, and we'll share those. Caleb?
Well, you bring up something that's interesting, so I will get into that. But first, I think it's necessary. Now, okay, let me take a step back. It's never necessary because there are a bunch of it, and I'm just going to say it, a bunch of administrators in the university and in the business world and in the NCAA that make millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars and make way more than they're worth and what they contribute to college football. We can agree with that, right, Dave?
Yes.
Yes. So from that perspective, it is price gouging because there's a lot of people collecting salaries they shouldn't be collecting, and a lot of people who maybe should be collecting salaries are getting too big of salaries. That part's true. So in that regard, it's price gouging. But in the vacuum of we have to hit this number so we can get this X amount of players, this isn't price gouging. It's necessary, and it's absolutely necessary, and it was targeted. Dave and I spoke on the phone last night about this, and Dave kind of corrected me, but I'm still sticking to my guns on this, which is that if you're going to have to raise money from somebody, if you're going to have to raise prices on somebody, raise them on the people who can afford them the most. And most likely, season ticket holders can afford them a lot more than students, for instance. Students do have to pay to go to games, and I think there are market rate increases for students year to year. But they're not price gouging the students. They're going for the season ticket holders, which, let's just be honest, that's in the 1%. They're in the 1%ers of income of Tennessee fans. By and large.
I did a little bit. That's true. I did a little bit of research, ask around, and basically for a good seat in the lower bowl, we're talking about roughly a hike of about $2,000 when you increase donations and when you increase the ticket prices, which are sure to come. So that's a rough estimate. I mean, to me and you, that would be too much. I mean, I've got an HD TV. I would stay at home. So that's a lot. Here's the other issue, the big issue that I have with it, guys. Listen, they've made it a spectacle. There are people in the national media that call Neyland Stadium the absolute best place to watch a game. And that's great. And it's cool. And they got all the lights and they got Sterl the Pearl. And that's fantastic. But the simple fact is, if I went to you and I said, hey, I've got tickets to the Broadway show. I'm friends with the guy that manages the venue, and he's going to give me 8 tickets, and you have to buy them. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you that 4 of the performances are going to be so bad that you're going to get up and walk out of the middle. Okay, now that to me is where Tennessee is right now. So it's not so much that they're raising ticket prices, is that if you're doing this, especially with a college football playoff that allows you to stumble, it's time to bring back the Notre Dames, the Miamis, Ohio State, Southern California, whoever you want to name, and have some big time home and home series, because you can lose that game. And I understand that the SEC is difficult enough. But those are the type of things that will help Tennessee in recruiting. Not the Mayo Classic in Charlotte. Yes, that gives you some exposure in that market. But if you sit down in front of a kid and say, hey, let's say a kid's from Charlotte even. Hey, you get to play in the Rose Bowl and your family's just 3 hours away from Knoxville, as opposed to you get to play in the Mayo Bowl. I mean, what's the bigger recruiting advantage. To me, a premier opponent on the schedule is an absolute must. It has to happen. And I believe they don't play any Power 5 team until 2007, Caleb, when they play Wisconsin, I believe it is. So, Caleb, that's my issue, is you've got to bring in some better opponents.
Okay, but here's my question on that. And I get your point, and particularly since season tickets are home regular season games. But from a recruiting perspective, does that hold water anymore when you got the college football playoff down the road, so you're going to play national games if you do your part, no matter what? I mean, it's not – I mean, I get if it's 1989 and you have 10 games and 7 are, like, within your state or in the conference. And so, okay, this is like your one chance to go national. You get to do this once or twice a year. But now, if you're going to the college football playoff and it's a 12-team college football playoff and you're playing 4 games, arguably in 4 different locations, is it really a recruiting draw anymore to say, hey, you can go play in the Rose Bowl this week for this game?
To play in premier games would be, to me, and I misspoke. 2027, Tennessee's scheduled to play Nebraska. 2026, they're scheduled to play Furman, and then at Nebraska, Western Michigan. So you're going to have a good matchup in Neyland Stadium 3 years from now in 2027. In 2025, you play Syracuse and Atlanta for the Chick-fil-A game. You play ETSU at home, UAB at home, New Mexico State at home. Caleb, for the fans that are doling out this type of cash, I want to see one premier non-conference game. Now, I would really like to ask Josh Heupel what he thought about that because, well, I know he wouldn't tell me, but there's 2 schools of thought. You're already playing a tough enough schedule in the SEC, make a bunch of patsies, and I could certainly make an argument for that. But by the same token, with a college football playoff, as I mentioned before, you could slip up against a quality opponent and still make the college football playoff. So right now, we're in unknown territory. We don't know how the college football playoff is going to truly judge teams when you get to 10 to 12 as far as who they played. So everything's kosher right now. But I'm telling you, but 2026, when you have an opening, and you'll play Nebraska, and beyond that, you better have a Power 5 opponent on the schedule in Neyland Stadium every single year. That, to me, is just a no-brainer from a marketing standpoint. And obviously, Tennessee Athletic Director Danny White knows marketing pretty well.
Oh, yes, he absolutely does. I think that, again, this kind of depends on what the rest of the country's doing. And I think that you don't want to put yourself at a decided disadvantage. By and large, I agree with you. And the biggest reason I agree with you is I think the college football playoff to a degree is going to go the route of the NCAA tournament, which is they are going to reward schedule strength. You probably agree with me on that too, right? That they're going to really favor that if they're anything like the selection committee.
They kind of did in 2022, I guess, with Alabama over Tennessee, maybe.
They did last year with Alabama over Florida State.
That's true.
I mean, yeah, and so they're definitely going to do it with a 12 team. Basically, your model is what you're talking about is the basketball model. And we're going to give Bruce Pearl credit here for a minute. When Bruce Pearl went to Tennessee, you talk about him being the cheerleader and things like that, and he was all of those things. But what was the one thing Bruce Pearl did, Dave? He went out of his way to ink deals with every high-profile basketball program he possibly could. And not only did it help Tennessee get higher seeds than maybe they should have in the NCAA tournament under him, but they brought half the Elite Eight to Knoxville 3 years in a row. And that was one of the biggest reasons that Thompson Bowling Arena became one of the top 5 basketball home court advantages in the country, was because Bruce Pearl was saying, in his mind, it was, I don't even care if I lose. I want these guys coming to Knoxville because I want the fan base excited to see these teams play. And it worked. And I think that's actually established a long-term interest in Tennessee basketball. Is that fair to say? Because of doing that.
I think it's very fair to say. I think that by playing who they played, that Tennessee basketball feels like a basketball school. And it's not just because they made the Elite Eight. It's because of who Bruce Pearl played and to some extent who Rick Barnes has played as well. Success ultimately will dictate if this is the right move or not. To me, though, the other factor is I would wait until Josh Heupel truly proves something. I would wait until Josh Heupel advanced in the playoffs. I mean, he just got a big raise. You're paying for that in some shape, form, or fashion. And now there's this ticket price increase. I have no problem with Tony Vitello getting a raise and with his players getting cash, which is legal. That's not debatable. They have to get some of the cash. But Caleb, that's my other issue with it is, I'm not from Missouri, but I'm going to show me state of mind. And Josh Heupel's shown me a lot, but he hasn't shown me that he can win a championship or even get to a championship game yet. Your take on that? Today's tough question brought to you by Banks and Jones. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Okay, do I have a point? Would Tennessee have this? I think there's some blowback, some backlash from some people, at least on my Facebook account and in my email. Would they have that if Josh Heupel had done what Tony Vitello has done? I mean, do you disagree that you should have waited a little bit to show some more success by the football program?
No, and here's why. And this goes to the other side. This was going to happen at some point. And you could actually argue doing this was to help breed success so they can actually pay the players that they want to get. The timing of this has everything to do with how good Tennessee's doing right now and the excitement. Danny White wanted to make this announcement right now with everybody thrilled about the state of the program. If this announcement was made right after Butch Jones said Tennessee's champions of life in 2016, I mean, Dave, what type of revolt would that be?
Oh, bad. And I think Tennessee's going to face a serious backlash if Tennessee loses to Oklahoma. And I think Tennessee's going to win. I'll have my prediction for you tomorrow, and I've been nailing it this year. So I think Tennessee's going to win and actually cover. I don't mind telling you that. But if they were to lose to Oklahoma, if something bad were to happen, then you're going to get that blowback. Not only is this team overinflated because of the three teams that they played aren't very good, but now I have to pay more to see it. That's why I don't understand the timing of it at all. This is something, and let's face it, this was leaked to On3. I mean, there's no question about that. I don't understand why they leaked it when they did. They sent out emails, actually, is what they did. So to the season ticket holders, but I would have waited. I would have waited till the off week or something. I don't understand the timing of it whatsoever.
Well, I understand the timing. They absolutely did this because they wanted to make sure they did it before Tennessee loses to Oklahoma. As bad as it will look now, this is covering their bases. You don't want to make this announcement and Tennessee lose to Oklahoma. Then it's really bad.
Okay, let me tell you something right now. Tennessee would not have done this, and if so, would have received incredible blowback from the fans, if not for one game. Alabama 2022.
That's hot.
Tell me I'm wrong.
1,000%. As a matter of fact, I mean, Tennessee, I had said for years that they were, I said this in a very negative way, that for about 10, 15 years, they have become the most predictable program, which is the sense of they'll run the tables against their South Carolinas and Kentuckys, but the minute they were to face an Alabama or Georgia and everybody was excited, they would lay an egg and humiliate themselves. That win changed that whole narrative. I mean, without that win, that narrative still applies without that win, right, Dave?
General Nealon, great point. Thought the whole pilot branding was supposed to relieve pressure on the common fan. Guess not.
Guys, Tennessee's trying to buy a championship. That's what you have to do in this age. Okay? I mean...
Okay, but these are the same fans, Caleb. Here's the problem I have. These are the same fans that sat through a decade of duty. I mean, they're the same ones. I mean, I just don't think now's the time. I think after the season, you could say this. If Tennessee's successful, perhaps there are financial reasons and donors would like to know ahead of time. Well, I'll tell you, because it's a charitable donation. So a lot of these corporations they make those decisions in fourth quarter. Okay, that's part of the reason that it's now. But still, I would have waited a little bit longer to roll this out there. You brought in a lot more money from Pilot, then you can bring in more money from the fans. That's the way I would have handled it.
Well, okay, but see, Dave, the reason I'm having I agree, but I'm more buying into the idea that they're having to do this no matter what, and they're trying to maximize the revenue period, because Danny White realizes with the way college football is going, the money you're going to drive in is going to be what brings it all in. And so you got to do what you got to do. And again, if he was targeting students, I'd be all after you. But I got to be consistent here. And I said this. The biggest scam in sports is when owners are like, you should support your team even when they're losing. That is just an excuse to say, buy my product even if it sucks. And in no other business would you be asked to do that. However, I also say, well, if the product's thriving and people want it and there's a demand for it, capitalism says it's more than fair to raise prices then. Everybody does that across the world. That's how markets work. And right now, Tennessee is doing so well. They're not asking you to be loyal to Tennessee when they're losing. They're saying, you guys are really interested in the program. There's a demand. I think we might raise our prices a little bit. Only on season ticket holders, which is the top 1% of 1%.